We'll go on to conduct of business, please.
Item 6A, waive second reading and adopt by two-thirds vote of the City Council an ordinance adding Chapter 3.39 to the San Bruno Municipal Code, imposing a transactions and use tax to be administered by the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration.
All right. Good afternoon, Javon Grogan, City Manager. To the Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the public present here and at home. We're here tonight for the second reading, as the City Clerk said, to adopt by two-thirds vote of the San Bruno City Council an ordinance adding Chapter 3.39 to the city's municipal code to impose a transactions and use tax that would be on the November 19 ballot. So what I want to say before we launch into the presentation is what we're talking about tonight is one prong of a multi-pronged strategy that the city embarked on in 2018 to improve the city's fiscal sustainability. And the key word there is sustainability. We are stable. The city has healthy reserves. But we know with the challenges that we have each year with our budget, with our rising cost, with the fact that there are a lot of services that we're unable to provide, and there are a lot of services that residents are demanding that we've been unable to add on an ongoing basis. That every year when we do our budget, there leaves much on the table that's not done. And so the city embarked on a fiscal sustainability project that's looking at a whole range of options, a number of which have been implemented, some are ongoing, and some will begin shortly. The one we're here tonight to talk about is a potential transactions and use tax. And so in March of 2019, the City Council authorized city staff to commission a survey, and we hired Godby Research to survey potential voters to ask two questions, really. We wanted to gauge their interest in a potential local revenue measure to provide funds to the city of San Bruno that could not be taken away by the state of California or could not be diverted to the county. And we also wanted to gauge their satisfaction with the services that the city provides and gauge their priorities for additional services. And so we did that survey, and the results were not surprising. 64% of our residents actually value the services we provide. We have wonderful employees that work day in and day out to provide great services to this community. But what we heard from the residents is they want more. They want us to maintain their roads better. They want us to maintain the facilities better. And there was some frustration with, frankly, the lack of services that are not being provided. And so we asked about the viability of a half-cent sales tax measure in November 19 and November 20. And what we saw through there that's on the board is the residents overwhelmingly supported a half-cent sales tax measure that would bring in approximately $4 million a year. In November 19, it was approximately 68% of voters were either a definite yes or a probable yes. And in November 20, the initial results were nearly 70% were either a definite yes or a probable yes. And so that was a good sign that we should continue to progress with this strategy further. And what the City Council authorized staff to do was to do a little further analysis on the priorities that were identified in that survey. And so the initial priorities that were identified on that survey are listed on the screen, and I'll read them because they're important. The first one was increased pothole repair and other street hazard repair, essentially repair the potholes. The next one was increased ongoing street maintenance. That's our annual slurry sealing of all of our roadways. Maintain neighborhood police patrols, attract and maintain local businesses, maintain city parks and playgrounds, and another version of that, maintain and repair our park structures for our children and youth. And so this is what we heard in that initial March survey. And one of the other things that we've heard is, well, I pay so much taxes already. Where's my tax dollars going? And so the council will find this property tax breakdown familiar because we displayed it during our budget process. And we've displayed it over the last few months at a number of presentations. And I wanted to just walk through it because it's a really clear illustration that for every dollar that our residents pay in property tax, only 15% actually stays here locally for us to use in the city of San Bruno on maintaining streets, roads, neighborhood police patrols, all those things that we know that our residents value. And so a breakdown of the dollars is on the screen, but we have of $1, 27 cents goes to our local San Bruno Park School District, 26 cents goes to the county, 19 cents goes to the high school district, 15 cents goes to the city of San Bruno, 7 cents goes to the junior college district, another 4 cents to the county's educational tax, and the remaining 2% is divided out to other agencies. The same general trend is true with sales tax. So most of our residents know that the sales tax here in San Bruno now is 9.25%. And so how much actually stays locally? Only 11 cents. 65% actually goes to the state of California for all of the services we receive from the state. 24% goes to the county and other districts, but again, only 11% stays locally. And this graph shows your typical $75 purchase and how that breaks down. And so after that effort in March, the City Council directed staff to do a little bit more robust community engagement and reach out to the community in a multi-pronged effort to really further gauge interest. And so the city staff, working with other community leaders, we set up a process that involved a number of things. One, we set up a website called Enhancing Your San Bruno that provided information on the city's fiscal condition. It also provided a link to a survey that was mailed to every household in San Bruno and available electronically. We then sent letters to a number of community leaders in the community. So every member of our board and commission, members of our nonprofit organizations, and informed them of our fiscal challenges, but also let them know that we as city staff are available to come to their organizations and give presentations. And we've done that. Myself and the finance director, Keith DeMartini, have been on a bit of a roadshow giving presentations to nonprofit organizations and community groups and the Chamber of Commerce. The last one we did was at Shelter Creek at their homeowners association meeting. And it's our effort to bring government to the people and inform them of some of our fiscal challenges, but also receive their input, ask them to take the survey. We did a mailer to every household in San Bruno, and this is a sample with a copy of the survey attached to it. And so our engagement efforts over the last few months have reached over 28,000 residents, and the additional survey, we received over 750 individual responses. And so what's up on the board is a screenshot of the Enhancing Your San Bruno website that we developed that's still up, and we are still accepting surveys from residents. And that website has frequently asked questions, information on how to receive a community presentation. So if you're a nonprofit organization, or if you're just a group of residents that would like the finance director and the city manager to come to your next meeting, we're willing to do that, sort of much to the chagrin of our families, but we've committed to do as many as we can because we really want to make government accessible to you. And so some of you may be wondering if we read all of those responses, and the answer is absolutely yes. We read every single response that came in. And again, the survey effort that we did after the poll, we sent those to every household. They were available electronically. They were sent out on Nextdoor. And I just want to take a moment to read some of the responses that we received from our residents. And many of them will strike a familiar tone. This one was received, and the comment said, "I've lived on San Luis for over 30 years, and the street has never been paved. Chapman Way hasn't been paved in over 20 years." All of these items are important, and so we ask residents to rank all of the priorities in order, and all of them are important. Euclid Ave needs repair really, really bad. Repaving my street, Sycamore Ave, it's a disgrace. We appreciate and thank the City of San Bruno for the actions on all of the above. Kudos to you. Please increase regular street trimming on city streets. I hope the city will clean and make improvements in Crestmore Canyon. Our road hasn't been repaved for over 30 years. This is a big concern because we have many potholes and unpaved areas. Many children live on the street. Please look into this and find solutions. And so what we know is that most of our roads haven't been repaved in over 30 years. And so in many of those community conversations, the question is why? Why haven't our roads been repaved in over 30 years? The answer is we do as much as we can with the resources that we have every year. We run a very large organization, and sadly, our pavement condition index is some of the worst in the county. And we do apply for and receive grants. Unfortunately, grants are typically received for arterial and collector streets, but paving the street out in front of your house really requires local dollars. And so that is our biggest challenge in getting to all of the residential streets. Is we unfortunately just don't have the resources to do that. And so we know that that's what our residents want. We know that that's what they demand. And so one of the things we want to do is to continue to find ways to develop resources. And so we're in the middle of this multi-pronged effort that has the city tightening our budgetary expenditures, and council experienced that during our budgetary process. And we held a number of our expenditures as low as possible. We also did not improve enhancements, some of which were very much needed. But you know what the council said? Absolutely not. We need to live within our means and directed staff to come back. We've worked on a number of other operational issues. San Bruno Cable is another one where we essentially, through renegotiating a lot of contracts, stop the bleeding, and that division is on its way to covering its costs for the first time in quite some time. And so we are making a number of efforts, but one of the prongs that we're here to talk about tonight is a potential revenue measure for the November 19 ballot. And so this slide that's up here just shows just another representation of the community feedback that we received. Over 1,400 individual responses from the community, some of which very frustrated at the quality of our infrastructure. But overall, as I said, 64% of the people are happy with the services that the city provides, and we frankly take that to heart and appreciate that, but know that we need to do more. And so the ballot question that is before the city tonight, and I'll read it. The ballot measure will be titled San Bruno Street Repair / Local City Services Measure. And the question reads, shall the City of San Bruno's measure to fund city services / facilities such as neighborhood police patrols, fire prevention services, urban wildfire protection, crime prevention / investigation, pothole / street repair, increasing parking supply, upgrading parks, and other city services / facilities, expanding services, supporting local businesses by levying a half-cent sales tax, providing approximately $4 million annually until ended by voters with an independent citizens oversight, and no money for Sacramento. All funds spent locally be adopted. And so that is the question that is before the council tonight. I will also just expand on the point of an independent citizens oversight committee is a part of the ballot measure and will review expenditures on an annual basis. Should the city council decide to put the measure on the ballot, but again, the city council will not be enacting or levying a tax. Only the voters can do that. And so the question that we're asking you tonight is, do you want to put this question before voters and have voters decide, do they want a half-cent sales tax measure to bring in $4 million to this community for needed services? And that ends my presentation. We are here for questions.
Questions from council? Questions or comments? And then, is there anybody for speaker cards? Anybody that wanted to speak on this in the audience? Okay, let's bring it to council. Anything?
Through the chair?
Please, Michael.
Yeah, so I know this is the second reading, and normally this is just on consent and we just go through it, but the first time this came to us, just for council's information, it came to, we didn't get around to it till like 2 in the morning or something, and so I don't think there was an appetite for asking a lot of questions, but as I went through it, I felt that some of the language in our ordinance, which will eventually work its way into our code, was a little confusing, and especially comparing it back to what we have currently in our municipal code, which I believe is a lot cleaner. It's less confusing about what's in, what's out. And since we've been going through this whole process this past year about cleaning up our municipal code and getting it updated and everything, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't putting in a lot of junk that we didn't really need. And in reading through what we have in the ordinance, it basically says that we're going to adopt a lot of what the state already has, which makes sense. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. And there are then some exceptions, but I noticed that there was a lot of repetition in terms of what we're addressing, and so I mean in general I don't really have a problem so much with what we're doing in terms of moving this forward. It's just that I want to make sure that the language that we agree to live by is I don't know, it's understandable, and that we really understand what we're putting in, what the exceptions are, and that it's in as clean a form as possible. I mean, I read through what's in there right now, and
Sounds like a lawyer wrote it.
yeah, and even worse, there are things that just sound repetitive. It sounds like like we're saying the same thing 3 or 4 different times, and I don't know that it's necessary. And we're putting this down as a new section in our municipal code when there seem to be sections that already sort of address it. So why aren't we just modifying those sections rather than adding a whole new section for this? So those are my questions.
Councilmember Salazar, let me see if I can answer the question for you.
This is our interim.
You might some of you know me. I'm Greg Rubens. I'm the acting city attorney tonight, and then we have another representative who helped draft the tax measure, who's here to answer maybe some technical questions if I'm not able to answer your question. So these types of tax measures are very technical in nature, and I think that's why the language that you're seeing in the ordinance is so detailed and sometimes repetitive. These types sales tax measures now are because it's a sales tax measure, it has to comply with the state rules up in Sacramento, because the way it works, when you pay a sales tax, you go to the retailer, and then the retailer collects the tax, and then the retailer has to file a tax return essentially with the state and pay the tax to the state. So we have to enter into an agreement with the taxing authority at the state in order to collect the tax, and then they disperse the tax back locally to us. So it's our money once it's collected through the retailer, but we have to have this agreement with the state because the money ends up in Sacramento temporarily until it's dispersed back to us. And this particular ordinance, the language also had to be approved by the state. It's a new agency, and I'm trying to get the name of it, but it's the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. So that agency requires that our ordinance contain all this language that is a little confusing and at times and repetitive. So in order for us to move forward with putting the tax on the ballot and hearing from the voters, as the city manager said, my understanding is the timing is the second reading. It's essential that it happen tonight so that it can be on the ballot in November. And in order to change anything in the ordinance, not only would we have to bring it back to Sacramento and get review there to make sure that they approve the changes, we'd have to reintroduce the ordinance and start over again, and that would be, I think, a delay that would essentially make it not possible to put it on this ballot.
Okay. So yeah, I understand. And I still don't agree that a lot of that language is necessary, because you mentioned that there are references to the state code, but I mean, do we really have to state that 4 times in 4 different places in there? So, I mean, I want to be able to read this and understand it, and then if somebody were to ask me, what does this mean? I don't think I'd be able to explain what's in there. And, as we're, our job here is to approve this stuff. We're actually creating the law here, and I feel that it's unfair to put us in a situation where it's so complicated that it's next to impossible to, ferret out what exactly we're saying. I mean, in the exception part, I think it's especially confusing where we have, that we're not going to include this except for this, and then it goes into talking about airplane fuel. And I mean, do we sell airplane fuel in San Bruno, and why is that an important thing to call out? That and I get it, and I know we need to move forward on this, and it's not really my intent to block that. It's just more, I don't know, maybe it's a discussion I need to have with Mark going forward that, I personally would appreciate cleaner language in these things. And like I said, our existing language is, in my opinion, a lot cleaner. It's a lot more clear. I mean, if we're calling an exception, it's listed out as an exception. So that was it. One more question, just regarding internet sales. So it's not called out specifically either in our code or in the state code, but I'm assuming that our half cent would also apply to internet sales?
So all depends. Most internet retailers now, Amazon being the biggest ones, do not have the sales tax situs at the location of delivery. They have it at the county, and so it's divvied up countywide in the county pool. There has been a lot of talk of the state in changing that. It hasn't really gotten traction in the last few years. There was a number of fears that if it was either the location of delivery or where the order is actually placed, so wherever the Amazon warehouse is, which is what a number of people were arguing for, that you could have big corporations that do deals with individual cities that frankly get the vast majority of the sales tax because the sales tax situs would be simply the location of the warehouse. And so right now, the vast majority of internet sales that are taxed go to the county pool, and then it's divvied out to the cities based on their proportionate share.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's it.
Other questions from council? Marty?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I was hoping you could provide for the public the difference between a general sales tax and a special tax, and how we can't come out and say the way it's written that the money's going to go straight to the roads, just so that the public's
Right.
aware of it. I've had that question a couple times already.
Absolutely. And so we're really listening to our residents. And what the residents said is that roads are significant, roads are number one, but roads are not the only priority. Right now, in the city of San Bruno, we have about a $6 million annual deficit on our roads. The amount of money that we're putting to our roads each year, about $2 million, means that the quality of our roads will decrease, not increase, with the status quo. And so this half-cent sales tax measure that would bring in $4 million, even if all of that was diverted to our roadways, it still would not be enough money to fully fund our roadways, which is why this is only one prong in a multi-pronged strategy. And what we heard from the residents, our roads are important, but other things are important, like wildfire protection and police patrols. And so if we're going to have a citizens oversight board and spend the money on a broad spectrum of things, even if one thing is in any given year gets more of the allocation, that's a general tax, and that requires a 50% plus one. A special tax would mean that we say that we are only going to spend the money on X. It requires a 2/3 majority, so 67%, and the money could only be spent on that one thing. And so we know that we have a lot of issues, and a general tax is more appropriate for what we heard from the residents and frankly, what problem we have here in San Bruno, because we just don't have one issue. We have several, even though our roads need a lot of money.
Laura?
To the chair, I think I was eating lunch one day when I was reading the Daily Journal, and there was an article about the city of Burlingame surplus of $3 to $4 million, and I almost choked, thinking, God, wouldn't that be amazing if that was the budget we got to balance? And that's not the same situation in San Bruno. And in the presentation, there's an estimated of $4 million to go towards the general fund to address roads and other things. So I guess my concern is, and thank you for reading some of the comments, because we hear that as well, and I hear that from residents myself. I have a family member who's complaining about a road that's never been paved in many years, and I see that. I drive those roads. But the reality of it is that we're not going to get those roads that weren't paved in 30 years paved because this gets passed. So what's the reality of, should something like this pass, in terms of making a dent in our road conditions? So let's say we're below the PCI right now. Are we trying to stay above that by a little bit? What is the average resident? I don't want to go out with an expectation, you pass this and my road's going to get paved, because that's not, I think we still struggle every year, and will continue to struggle to balance our budget. And this is just going to be sort of a drop in the bucket. It's not going to be enough.
So roads are rated on what's called a PCI pavement condition index of 1 to 100. So our current PCI.
Mike.
Sorry. Roads are rated by what's called a PCI, a pavement condition index, and currently our PCI is 61. We really want it to be around 80. What I would say is our first strategy for our roads is to provide enough funding so at least the PCI stops dropping. That's kind of mission number one. When you find yourself in a hole, you do is you stop digging. And so we need to fund enough resources and to find enough resources to stop the quality from decreasing, and then gradually build our way up. And again, this is not the solution to pave every residential street in the city of San Bruno. We need to employ a whole host of strategies. One of those is economic development. Others are continuing to tighten our budget and make some hard choices about the services we provide, and like we did during this year's budget process. And the city council came back and said, you know what, we need to live within our means. And so staff took that to heart and came back with a proposal. And we did have some one-time money that we spent on one-time items, but we lived within revenues matching the expenditures outside of one-time items. And so we're going to have to make tough calls. And as far as telling a resident, will the street in front of their house be repaved? We use a program that most cities use called Street Saver, and it targets the money we have, no matter how large you have, on the roads that need it the most, based on the fact of where they are in their condition cycle. So what you want to do in general with roads is, when you see the cracks on a road that's in fair condition, you want to do a slurry seal to seal those cracks to prevent the water penetration from removing some of the substrate. And so that's why some of our residents say, well, my street is terrible, but they're over there slurry sealing that road that's not that bad. Well, we're actually trying to pave that road, and unfortunately the street in front of your house hasn't been probably paved in 20 or 30 years, and so that's a full reconstruction. And so the program we use directs the amount of money to the best place. And every year, some streets get a full reconstruction, other streets get a slurry seal, because we're trying to stop the quality from decreasing. And so it's actually a very, and I'm probably not doing it justice, but it's a very complicated process that our traffic engineers go through using the Street Saver program and directing the limited funds we have.
And I also, I think some other comments too in reference to funding and, the importance of passing this tax is also, we all drive throughout the city, and we all drive into every neighborhood, whether it's the downtown area, and as every council member sees it and every staff member sees it, there's all these things we want to do and improve, but it always comes back to what's the funding. And as we're all homeowners, we all have to look at, my home, and I've got to replace a roof, and I got to replace carpets, or I need, guess what? The dryer went out and so did the microwave, and so those things that I want to do get pushed off. And I think that the city, we're in the same situation. And so I think the point I want to make is that we see those things that you see as well. We're not happy with it. We're not pleased with it. We know that the city and the staff does a lot of hard work in picking up garbage and reporting on ordinance issues, but there's only so many staff members, and we're really at a very limited in terms of getting that job done. So every little bit that will help to be able to support basic services. And at the end of the day, most important, and what we always want to make sure is that we have an adequate police and fire department. And I think San Bruno's got one of the best. And I will always put money toward that and make sure that we can continue to support that. So thank you for your presentation.
I just wanted to comment on a couple things. One, Michael, the reason for the language is it wasn't just our city attorneys, it was the attorneys in Sacramento as well. So you get 3 or 4 attorneys working on something, it comes out the way it did. Yeah, you need an attorney to read it, and you need one to interpret it, and then 2 of them won't agree anyway. So that's all right. But the bottom line is this will supply San Bruno with close to $4 million a year that we desperately need. We needed it last year, we needed it the year before, we needed it before that. What's shocking to me, and I hope it all made an impact to you, so for every dollar that you pay in your property tax, and I know some of us have been here for a long, long time, and our property taxes are pretty minimum, and some of us, a friend of mine's daughter just bought a house here, it was over $1 million. Her property taxes are $10,000 a year. Only 15, no, I'm not even doing that right. Yes, 15 cents of every one of those dollars comes to the city. And in the sales tax, only 11 cents. So we get 26 cents out of every $2 that go to taxes, whatever those are. And with that money, we pay for your fire and your police officers, we pay for their training, we pay for their equipment, we pay for those shiny, beautiful fire trucks that are there, we pay for the medical stuff, we pay for all the staff that you see there that helps keep everything running, we pay for the streets, we pay for everything, the senior center, and with all of that, it's still not enough. So so that piece. And keep in mind, 89 miles of roads, streets and roads in San Bruno that we're responsible for. 89 miles. That's a huge amount. So I'm supporting this. I hope we all support this, people in the audience and people who are listening. We vitally need it. Without this, we don't know where we're going next.
Just for myself, I am going to support this. It is something, too, what is important is just, as we said, we're ending the last budget, and we'll see how we did. We're entering in this budget balanced, as we asked, council asked to go back. We also have taken steps to go back and do things as the manager and the finance director have said, which is to audit, whether that means the hotels for the TOT tax, that means the business license tax. Those are things that haven't been done, but that are being done because what we want to make sure that those that are supposed to be paying are paying, and those that are supposed to be contributing are contributing. And really, we could say, who pays, but we all pay for our police and our fire and our community services department. And I can tell you it's not cheap, but I will tell you that even in my term as mayor, being at 2 shooting situations, I want to make sure this community has what it needs, and at those times that we can respond. I also know that in all reality, our PCI got a little uptick, and that was because some monies that got sent back to us for staff time during the aftermath of the PG&E explosion. This former council said, hey, let's take that $3 million, let's put it off to the side, and let's allocate one additional $1 million each year to help get our PCI back up. This council took that action to do that, and that helped kind of keep us going, but obviously that only lasts so long. So in order for us to meet the needs of what the folks are saying, it also is that other folks that come in from out of our city to the mall, which sometimes we have to respond to the mall for various things, they pay. And they're using our sidewalks, our roads, they're driving in our town, they're utilizing our public safety personnel when they have emergencies, which is fine, but also that helps make them contribute to this community that they visit, as I have to do or you have to do when you go to another community that has also passed that sales tax. So I think for those reasons, this is something that I know we voted on it last time, but obviously it's our second opportunity to come forward on this and finalize it if we wish and have it go on the ballot. So are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah,
Michael.
I have one. So if the ballot measure were to fail, this ordinance would stay on the books, but it would have basically no merit?
I think the Councilmember Salazar, the ordinance, if it doesn't pass, it's not codified in your municipal code. It just wouldn't be there.
Why would you ask a question if it failed?
I'm just saying. I mean, our job
Think
here,
optimistic now.
our job here is to basically
I
pass this
appreciate-
ordinance, and then it's in the hands of the voters.
Oh, it
so
is.
Just
But, and then,
wanna make it
and
clear
if
that
my understanding, if it doesn't pass, then it's, it's not there.
it's null and void.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, any action from council? We have
I will
here.
move that we close the public hearing. Or no, I mean waive the second reading. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
If
Waive
any-
the second reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to waive the second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. And then if somebody would like to, I'm sorry, yes,
I think I think that this calls for a roll call vote.
on the waiving?
No, on the adoption.
Yes.
Okay, you're getting to that.
We're going to go there next.
Okay.
Okay.
Excuse me. I'm just making sure.
No, got to keep us, make sure we're
Good
doing it
job.
right. Now we want to go ahead and see if there's, to adopt the ordinance, which will require a 2/3 vote of the council. Is there, anybody wants to introduce that?
I will make a motion to introduce the ordinance.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor O'Connell.
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye,
Motion carries.
thank you.